Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, John Kenney, who's here to share with us his new novel, I See You've Called in Dead. So what would happen if the person who writes obituaries accidentally publishes their own? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. John Kenney is the author of 3 novels and 4 books of poetry. His first novel, Truth in Advertising, won the Thurber Prize for American Humor. He's also the author of Talk to Me, which received a starred Kirkus review. He's a longtime contributor to the New Yorker magazine's Shouts Murmurs. So welcome to the show, John Kenney.
Thank you, Marianne.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
That is a good question. It was an event that happened in May of 2019. I'm one of 6 boys, and one of my brothers got sick. He was a firefighter, like our father and both of our grandfathers. And my other brothers and I had been visiting him on a regular basis. He was at ground zero for about 7 days working on the pile, and we think he might have contracted something from that very toxic air. But fortunately, he went quickly and did not suffer. But the last time I saw him, I arrived before my other 4 brothers, and Tom and I were chatting. He was a big, handsome Irish guy and sitting in a chair covered with a blanket, less of himself, but still very much in there, darkly funny. And I heard a car pull into the driveway, and I looked out the window and I saw my other 4 brothers, and I turned to Tom and I said, "The others are here." And with sort of Buster Keaton quickness, he dropped an arm off the side of the chair, let his head drop to the side, and with this little, trying to suppress a grin, said, "Tell them they're too late." And I was sort of laughing with my mouth open in shock. There were so many emotions going through me. I just thought, how can he be funny, darkly funny, at a time like this when he had 2 weeks to live? And I think part of it was just his personality, but part of it is he was a guy who had lived the life he had wanted to live. He was a firefighter. He was a dad to these 2 great grown daughters, a husband, a good friend. But he had lived how he wished to live. He had no regrets. And the moment really struck me, and that was the idea. I thought, there's a book in this.
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's always difficult when we lose someone we're so close to.
It is, but there isn't a person listening to this who hasn't gone through loss. And depending on your belief system, I very much believe that those people, they are with us in some form. There's a wonderful saying. I think it's attributed to the ancient Egyptians. They say we die twice. The first is when we die, and the second is when people stop saying our name. So I talk about my brother Tom often. In fact, the book is dedicated to him.
So how did you pivot this story, this such a personal loss, into this book?
I didn't want the story to be about Tom. I very much there are only 2 emotions that really interest me. One is really laughing, and the other is sort of sobbing. I find those spaces very interesting. I wanted to take the essence of, look, death is a universal thing, and I'm a product of my surroundings. I grew up in the 70s in Boston, Irish Catholic family, and to this day, I don't really have a vocabulary about this universal thing, death. I'm awkward around it. I don't know how to act at wakes and funerals. I don't know what to say. And in my life anyway, I don't know about you and your listeners, but I don't talk about it much. I came across a wonderful quote, 3,000-year-old epic Indian poem, where a wise person is asked, someone says, "What's the greatest wonder in the world?" And the wise person he says, "The greatest wonder is that every day people die, and yet the living walk around as if they're immortal." That's certainly true of my own life. I get up in my head caught up in my head, and the commute, the traffic, the frustrating thing, and I waste time. And I'm a little better as I get older about sort of catching that before it slips away. But yeah, I mean, I think writing about death in a hopefully funny-ish way is a bit of a high wire act. I wanted to respect this thing, but I also wanted to, I don't know, kind of examine it in a way that I never had. So
I think you touch on a chord that so many people resonate with, and it's really the topic of death can be very difficult for so many people, and so many people to even address or acknowledge, and we don't know what to say when someone has a loss, or how to really approach it well, and it gets very complicated. And I think your book really puts humor in a way into this topic that allows people to perhaps look at death in a little bit different light.
I hope so. You're very kind to say that. Look, again, there isn't anyone who's listening who hasn't experienced grief, and probably profound grief, the loss of a parent, or God forbid, a child, or a friend, or whatever it is. Death is, even if we know it's coming, if it's an older person who is perhaps sick, I find death is always surprising. It's like, wait, they were just here. I just saw them. I just touched them. I just spoke with them. It's always surprising to me. And then, of course, the sudden deaths are profoundly so. I think we might not think about grief in maybe the healthiest way. I think as Americans, we have this wonderful sense of, look, just, soldier on. It'll get better. Time heals all wounds. I love the idea of soldiering on. I love the idea of resilience. But I also think grief is a very tricky beast, because in my experience, grief is wily and very, very patient. And we, in my experience, try to run from it, ignore it, hide from it, binge watch TV, drink yourself out of it, eat yourself out of it, ignore it, run from it. But grief just waits. And at some point, it demands of you. It says, listen, I'm not going anywhere. I may get smaller, I may go into the distance, but you have to deal with me. You have to deal with me. And when you do that, you can move forward. You'll laugh again. You won't cry every day. You will remember the person, the grief. You'll remember it. But grief is like a tattoo. It's with you, and it demands that you pay attention to it. That's been my experience.
Without going into any spoilers, can you share a little bit about I see you've called in dead?
Absolutely. So it's this, as the book begins, it's the story of a mid 40-ish obituary writer who is not doing so well lately. His wife has left him for another man, a far better looking, richer Englishman. They don't have children, and he's sort of he's mailing it in a bit lately at work. He's got some other issues from the past that he has not dealt with that are going to rear their ugly head. And one evening, as the book opens, after a spectacularly awkward blind date where the woman brings her ex-boyfriend to the blind date, our hero goes home and has a bit too much to drink and thinks it would be really funny to publish his own obituary, or rather write it. He accidentally publishes it. He works for a big company like the Associated Press, and hits the wrong button. It goes international, and the company wants to fire him, but they can't legally fire a dead person. And according to the system, he's dead. So he's sort of in limbo. And he ends up going to the wakes and funerals of strangers with his best friend, an older mentor who lives life in a wheelchair.
What type of research did you do for this story and for this book?
One of the first things I did was reach out, sort of a cold call email, to an obituary writer at the Washington Post who was kind enough to get back to me, and we ended up having an hour and a half Zoom call. And it was really interesting. I studied journalism and English literature in college, and so you have to write lots of things in journalism school. You have to write a news story, a police story, an obituary, your own obituary, which was really quite an interesting thing to do. And in fact, I touch on that in the book a bit. But, obituary writing is different. I mean, the news changes every day, and yet an obituary is a thing that people cut out and save or download and save today. It's a thing that's supposed to last, and it's you know, God forbid if you've ever had to do it, but to try to sum up someone's life in 3, 4, 500 words without just getting into where they went to school and what their job was and the names of their children. What's tricky about it is it's more like poetry. You're trying to find the essence of someone's life. You're not telling the story of their life, but stories from their life. A line or two that defined who they were. And good obituaries are really lovely things. So I talked with this gentleman, and I read a few books about death in different cultures. Mostly as I do most days, sat around and didn't write and thought about the people in my life who have passed away. And I tried to put that down on the page.
So your main character, Bud, was he crafted after anyone that you know?
Well, he wasn't. I This is my third novel. My first novel was a much more autobiographical experience, as first novels often are. It was about a guy who worked at an advertising agency in New York. I used to work at an advertising agency in New York. Where do I come up with my ideas? I don't know where this character came from. I guess all I would say about him is, superheroes don't really interest me. Wounded people interest me. People who put on a brave face and get up and go to work and do things each day. But I'm fascinated by sort of regular people like all of us who carry around these invisible hurts and wounds and yet try to do our best. The best friend in the book, the person in the wheelchair, is based loosely on a dear friend of mine who lost the use of his legs about 10 years ago. And that was a sort of profound experience for me. And I wanted to work it in too, because I don't read a lot of fiction where someone has that kind of, I don't want to say disability because I don't want to be insensitive, but that kind of a situation. And the rest of the people, God only knows where they came from. What amazes me each day is the beauty and resilience and hope of regular people like you and I, who find beauty in the everyday and go on. Robert Frost, the New Hampshire poet, said, "I can sum up what I've learned about life in 3 words: life goes on." And I have such sort of lump in my throat admiration for people who get up and make the best of each day and are hopeful for themselves and their families and the country. It's people in my orbit who are like that, who move me and make me want to write things. If there is a single person in my life who defined my outlook, it was my mother. She died when I was 12, but the impact she had on me, the kind of person she was, she was, barely 5'1", married to a firefighter, and somehow brought up 6 sons on a firefighter's budget and always had a smile on her face. And, we would be driving down the street and, we were far from rich, but she'd see some people at a bus stop and she'd say, we're the lucky ones. We have a car. They're waiting for a bus. It is a trite thing, the glass half full, half empty. But man, if you can see the riches, the small riches in the everyday, that was the worldview she taught me, to think about other people, to be empathetic, to be kind, to remember that what you're seeing maybe isn't their best self as they cut you off in traffic and flip you the bird, that maybe they're on their way to visit a sick kid in the hospital or something. I mean, I don't know, but people like that, and especially my mother, gave me that worldview.
Well, John, you're such an inspiration. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Marianne, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, John. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new novel, I See You've Called in Dead. I See You've Called in Dead is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.